Imagine Twitch. Who knew? Like I said, maybe his wife or somebody close to him. Ellen DeGeneres didn't really know it. She was around him quite a bit. A lot of people that talked about Twitch afterwards were shocked. They didn't know it, that he was going through this. Hey everyone, welcome to another Sit Down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. All is very good, very blessed on this end. And as always, I give God all the praise, honor, and glory, and thanksgiving for that. So what do I want to talk about today? You know, the title of this video is Twitch. And I do want to talk about Twitch, and I want to talk about depression. And I want to, a tragedy would happen with Twitch. Tragedy, 40-year-old young man, so talented, so vibrant, husband, father of children, happy-go-lucky guy. Every time you seen him, he had a good face on. I think my daughters and my wife, they're all dancers. You know, my daughters talked about him quite a bit. They respected him. They looked up to him. I think he was on American Idol or one of these songs. He almost came in and wanted, So You Think You Can Dance. That was it, not American Idol. I got that in my head. But yeah, and you know, they talked about him quite often in the house, what a talent that he was. They watched Ellen DeGeneres, and he was a mainstay on that show as a producer. She loved him. What a tremendous, tremendous loss, not only for his family, but for the world. Such a good person, it seemed. And depression is what got him in. Now, let me get to this. Growing up, there was no such thing as depression in my house. If you were depressed, you were weak, you were feeling sorry for yourself, you weren't allowed to be depressed. Never. I'd be in trouble if I ever said I was depressed. So I didn't grow up even knowing what depression was. Was that wrong? Yes. Did my parents willfully not recognize depression? No. It was just something that they couldn't deal with either. You know, it was a sign of weakness, I guess. They didn't even know what it meant. You know, I never even heard the word depression in my house. And forgive me for that. That's not right. That's just how I grew up. And I don't know that I was ever depressed, I think, until I went to prison. And I had some nights in the hole, and I think I spoke about it. I did a video recently about it. I spoke to Jordan Peterson about it. It was a time when I felt depression. It wasn't chronic. It wasn't clinical. It didn't last long. But I knew what it felt like. And recently, unfortunately, in my own home, many of you know my daughter lost someone very dear to her, probably would have been engaged to him right now, wonderful young man who passed away just over a year ago. And my daughter suffered depression in this past year. And we watched it, and it was horrible to see and to witness. And praise God, you know, because of her faith and because my church, you know, really reached out to her. It's amazing what her faith in God has done for her. And I have to say it, people. And of course, we prayed for her as a family. She attended church. They ministered to her, and she's been able to come out of her depression. It took some time, and every once in a while, she'll have her days. You know, it comes back. Can't help that. But she's been able to overcome it, you know, and praise God, thank God for that. But I want to talk about it because I get so many messages from all of you about certain things that I talk about, and so many of you thank me. It's very humbling, very humbling. And I want to talk about Twitch, and I want to talk about depression because it is chronic. It's a real big problem in our society, especially among young men and even young women, middle-aged men. And I'm going to read you some statistics because I think people need to be aware of this and people need to understand it, and we have to deal with it. And I have somewhat of a solution because I think I know what the root causes of these things are. Not in all cases, but in many cases. I've had the opportunity to speak to a lot of young men and some young women, but a lot of young men who grew up in fatherless homes. And as a result of that, they grew up psychologically impaired in many ways because they didn't have a role model in the house. You know, my wife will even tell you, you know, her father was in the house, but he was kind of a crazy guy, I got to say it. And it wasn't a normal upbringing that she had. Her mother was very stable, a very strong woman of Christ, thank God, you know, because all 7 kids were certainly highly influenced by her. They kept her grounded. They're all walking in faith right now. But my wife will tell me the only stable person she saw in her life, stable man, which was a role model, was her cousin. He was a school teacher. His family was educated, and she saw stability in the home, and that kind of helped her growing up. So even women, need stability, growing up psychologically, or it does have an impact. So, the other thing in, comparison, I would say, to Twitch, about maybe 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I spoke at a church. I'm not going to give the details, might be personal, but there was a pastor there, young man, good-looking guy, he's tall, he's about 6'2" tall, had a very beautiful wife, beautiful children, very vibrant guy, worked in the church, had everything going for him. Well, he spent the day with his family, with his kids. They were at the playground, had a wonderful day, and then in his home that evening, he committed suicide in front of his wife. We were shocked. Depression. He was going through something that nobody knew. Same thing that Twitch was probably dealing with, because to the outside world, everything looked great. But he was dealing with a demon inside of him, that demon of depression that just got to him. And you know what? This is widespread. We hear about it with Twitch, and we heard about it with that pastor because they had a following. But you know what? A lot of young men are suffering over this. I want to read you something, some statistics. First, let's talk about Twitch. Twitch, his real name was Boss. Stephen Laurel Boss was an American freestyle hip-hop dancer, a choreographer, an actor, a television producer, and a television personality. How could you get more than that? He was 40 years old. He was born in 1982, and he died, as we know, about a month ago. While friends, family, and fans find it hard to reconcile Twitch's sunny persona with the decision to take his own life, this is an all too typical scenario, says Jesse Gold, MD, an assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry at Washington University St. Louis School of Medicine. I don't think there's always an obvious face of a person who is struggling with depression. People can hide their real emotions even from the people they are closest to. Now, obviously, Twitch hid his emotions. Now, maybe his wife knew something, but did she know it to that degree? I doubt it. To that degree, I mean, he just slipped off one night, and he had a wonderful day from what we understand. It was great. He was playing with his kids. He was with his wife. Everything was great. And that night, something got to him so seriously, so disturbing, that he left his house, went to a hotel room, and with a gun shot himself and committed suicide. I mean, it's hard for me to reconcile. I just don't get it. I really don't. It's very, very difficult because I really don't understand depression like maybe we should. Let me read on. I think it implies that people's problems aren't so bad because they're dealing with it. Just because someone goes to work every day, performs their job well, it doesn't mean they aren't going through something. Think about that. You see people at work, you see your kids maybe functioning okay, but something's bothering them. It may not come out right away, but something inside of them is bothering them. It's mystifying in a way. And just because you don't see it outwardly doesn't mean someone doesn't need help. Persistent depressive disorder, PDD, is a long-term chronic form of depression characterized by a low mood that lasts for at least 2 years. If you're noticing something for at least 2 years, highs, lows. Usually it isn't as severe as major depressive disorder where you really see it, but rather a mild to moderate depression lasts for most of the day, on most days, over a long stretch of time. For some people, it can be as or more psychologically disabling than episodic major depression. People going through this kind of depression have a change in sleep. I'm making you aware of this. Change in interest, change in mood, change in appetite, and intermittent suicidal thoughts. They probably can't tell you the last time they felt good. Now imagine that. Imagine Twitch. Who knew? Like I said, maybe his wife or somebody close to him. Ellen DeGeneres didn't really know it. She was around him quite a bit. A lot of people that talked about Twitch afterwards were shocked. They didn't know it, that he was going through this. Why am I saying this? Again, messages from people, thanking me for being an encouragement to them, for giving them hope. Some of them, I've had people say they were going to commit suicide. And then they saw one of my videos, and it just encouraged them. I'm like shocked when I hear this. Going to commit suicide in one of my videos? it shows you how many people are in need of something out there, something more. For me, it's faith, people. You know, I'm not going to get preachy on this, but for me, it's faith, because when I went through that depression time in my life, it was my faith that picked me up. I got to be honest with you. It really did. Now, that doesn't make me the best Christian in the world. I'm not. But I got something to live for. I got hope. I got a belief that there's a better place when we leave this earth, and I'm striving to get there. That's it. And to do the right thing, so that when I stand in judgment, I'll be told that. That's what it's all about. Now, these are some statistics that really concern me, and I'm going to get to the bottom line on this, what I really believe could be helpful and what I intend to do along with my team of people. According to Kevin Caruso at suicide.org, untreated depression is the #1 cause of suicide. There's 4 major depression disorders. Listen to this. Middle-aged people, especially men, have the highest rate of suicide compared to other groups. 80% of all deaths by suicide in the U.S. are among men and women aged 45 to 54. Men ages 85 and older have the highest rate of any group in the country. And that's recent. That's as of November 8th, 2022. Men. Why are men more prone to suicide than women? I'm going to get into that. I think I have a theory as to why. It may not be accurate. I'm certainly not a doctor. I can't give you that. I'm only telling you from my experience. Having spoken to so many men, I'll be in a men's group this Saturday. I'm going to be speaking to 600 men. I do that quite a bit. I go into prisons. I go into juvenile homes. I spent 8 years, in prison with other men, young men too. The overall suicide rate increased 30% between 2000 and 2020. Now, why would that be? Life is supposedly getting better. We have better technology. We have better medical advances. Why is the suicide rate gone up 30% in the last 22 years? I think I know why, at least partial cause of why, especially among men. We'll get into that. Serious life changes such as relationship problems, unemployment, substance abuse, and poverty may increase suicide risk among vulnerable adults. Although suicide rates are increasing in both middle-aged men and women, men are much more likely than women to die by suicide. It's almost like 3 to 1. Men, dying by suicide over women. Now listen to this. Self-reported suicide attempts for Black adolescents rose by 73% between 1991 and 2017. Don't start with the racist stuff. I'm going to tell you why. Because I spent so much time with young Black men in prison. I've spent so much time speaking to young Black men in juvenile halls and prison in the last 25 years. And I'm going to tell you because most of them grow up in a broken home. They don't have a father figure in the house. They have nobody to look up to, nobody to teach them properly. Most of the time, their moms are just trying to survive on their own. A fatherless home is a dangerous home. Please, women, don't get offended by this. Look, when I talk about a father being in the home, that's a benefit to the mother. It's a benefit to the woman. It's hard to raise children. My wife had to raise our kids when I was away. It wasn't easy. And I was still alive. I was still in touch with them. I still wrote them. I still saw them on a weekly basis. But she had a challenge. And you know what? I was able to see that. The difference between the children that I was away much of their early years and my daughter, one daughter, who I was with since birth, there's a real difference in them. There's a difference in my relationship with them. There's a difference in her relationship with me because I've been there since day one. You got to have a father in the house. You got to have a mentor if you don't have a father. Somebody that you can look up to, somebody that gives you guidance, somebody that you can look to for a mentor. When you're having a problem, who do you want to talk to? Got to have a guy in the house also. Women, don't get offended by it, please. It's not meant to be offensive in any way, shape, or form. It's meant to be helpful for you and your children. Let me continue. Black boys increasingly likely to attempt suicide than black girls who have more ideation than attempts. In other words, girls have more of an idea of committing suicide than actually attempting to do it. Boys do it more. Black boys are engaging in more lethal means when attempting suicide than black girls, which has increased by 122% between 1997 and 2017. 122% increase in black boys attempting to commit suicide. Why? Fatherless home? not knowing what a man is supposed to be in this life? Think that can have any connection? Think I'm crazy? No, I'm not. Black boys are twice as likely to die by suicide than white youth. Now that's terrible. That's horrible. But you know what? This is the result of young people being brought up in a home without two parents. I don't know why people get offended by this. I don't know why people sometimes say, oh, Michael, it's racist or it's prejudice. It's not. It's reality. The problems that we have in America today in our youth is the breakup of the family. This is not brain surgery. Statistically, all the numbers bear out horribly, but they do bear out. In 2014, I want you to hear this, 80% of suicide deaths in the black community were men. 80%. Firearms were the predominant method of suicide among African Americans, regardless of sex or age. Suffocation was the second most prevalent method. Young black men are blowing their brains out or suffocating themselves to death. Black men don't often recognize depression or trauma as an issue. Therefore, they don't associate it as a problem. You know why? Because you think it's not manly to say you're depressed? No, it's manly to say you're depressed. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, listen, I've been defending Andrew Tate recently, and what I've been defending is his right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. That's number one. Number two, I've had conversations with Andrew Tate. Knowing where he is in his life at this point in time, it's very, very hard for me to believe the charges that were not lodged against him. He hasn't been charged with anything yet. But, you know, the rumors, the things that are out there, the word that is out there about this, you know, human trafficking or whatever it might be, it's just hard for me to believe it. If the evidence shows that he's guilty, well, then there's evidence. I'm just saying it's hard for me to believe it at this point. Okay, but I will say this. In telling men to be men, there's nothing offensive about that. Do you understand that if a man acts correctly as a man, is a benefit to women, he's a benefit to children, he's a benefit to society in general? There's nothing wrong with teaching men to be that. Not misogynist, nobody believes in that, or anybody that does, just dismiss them. It's wrong. Now, you know, I mean, Andrew Tate has said he wasn't a misogynist. He said it many, many times. He's accused of being that. I don't know. Not his girlfriend, never spoke to his girlfriend, but many of his girlfriends are sticking up for him right now. They said it's not true. That's what they're saying. It's all over YouTube. It's on social media. They're saying that. It's not true. So, but look, men acting like men is important. You know, I am devoting much of my time. I've created a platform called Mob Ties. It's for men and women, but we're going to let men understand what it is to be a real man in 2023. You know, one of the things that's killing me, we're hearing about a woke military. Who wants a woke military? I want men in the military that are courageous, that are strong, that are ready to fight and die for their country. That's what we want in the military. I'm not worried. And you know something? Look, people in the military, soldiers that I've spoken to, they're not racist. When you're in a foxhole, nobody is racist. You're all brothers and sisters at that point in time. You know what? Recently, you saw what happened with that kid, Damian Harris, on the field. Did you see what happened after that? You know the story. He collapsed. He's doing okay right now. Praise God, prayer. But did you see what happened? Black, white, everybody in uniform on the ground praying, crying, because one of their brothers was down and injured. There's no racism among players in sports. I've been around sports all my life. I've spoken to all the professional and college sports teams for the last 20 some odd years. They're in the trenches with one another. This isn't a racist thing when you're teaching men to be men. It's not racist when you want our military to be strong men. It's not racist, okay, when you're walking down the street with your wife, your daughter, your girlfriend, and somebody attacks you, you want the man to be the one that's going to save you and fight for you. So look, I'm going to wrap it up now. I mean, I can talk about this subject. I can go on and on and on because it concerns me, you know. People understand depression is a real issue, a real problem, and we feel for Twitch and his family. I feel for that young man at the church. I felt for my daughter, you know, when I saw her going through it. So why am I saying this? You know, just so you recognize it. And guys, if you're troubled by something, don't keep it inside. It might be something really troubling to you. I can't even bear the thought of somebody, a young person, committing suicide, even thinking about it. You know, one other thing I forgot to mention, I have a friend who's the chief of police at UCLA. You know, he told me, I don't even want to give you the stat. It was horrifying how many young college students commit suicide. I don't even want to tell you how many, because it's It's a number that's depressing to hear, honestly. So we got to do something about this, Number one, people, it's got to be in the home. If you're in a fatherless home, you got to look for a mentor. Maybe that's something I'm going to be able to help you with, a program, a platform we're putting together now, because it's important to me. Young men need somebody to look up to, young women too. It's important for all of you. We're going to try to, fill that void at least as best as we could. So we're going to try to fill that void as best as we can. And anybody that can contribute in that regard should do that. I don't mean financially, I mean any way that you can. Not only on my platform, but if you have that ability, to be a mentor to someone that's going through something, you should really think hard about it. Be very rewarding, not only for you, but for the person that you're mentoring. So I'm going to wrap it up right now. Again, I appreciate it, and I hope you understand where I'm going with this. Again, you'll still hear the mob stories from me, no doubt. Fortunately or unfortunately, there isn't a lot of current mob news going on. There was a time when it used to be every day, during my era, every single day. You read the New York papers, you're going to read about the mob. Doesn't happen anymore. Every couple of months now, every once in a while. Guys have pretty well gone undercover. It's changed, not like it was before. But you'll still hear it from me. You'll still get that perspective. I have another movie that I'm going to be critiquing, I would say, reviewing. I think you're going to enjoy. Armand, one of my favorite actors, is in it. We'll get to that. But that's it for today. How do I always leave you? Same way, people. It's not going to change. Be safe, and you know how I feel about that. Be healthy. Hey, everybody's trying to be healthy now, right? First 2 months of the year, what happens? Everybody's in the gym, can't get a membership, everybody's on a diet. That starts to fade out, unfortunately, around March. But hey, for those of you that can stick with it, stick with it. It's very rewarding. Be safe, be healthy. God bless every one of you. And people, I'm telling you, I don't know how you do this without God in your life. I really mean that. So, God bless all of you. Yes, I'll see you next time.